Hi, my name is Eunjoo. I'm a professor of Kyungil University. I'm working at the Department of Liberal Arts, and my major is Instruction Technology. The topic that today I will introduce to you is research on levels of the willingness to communicate and communication skills. This research contains background, research purposes, literature review, and study methodology, and findings and discussions. The reason why I study this research is because of the COVID-19. We have a lot of online classes, and there are a lot of students who have trouble with taking online classes, especially the personal characteristics of communication is one of the big factors affecting on the success of online class. So I was interested in how student communication skills are in online learning environments. So if we look at the background first, communication skills are emphasized as one of the essential competencies for students, as well as in one of the essential competencies in our lives. And students have been taught communication skills in many different classroom as a way of discussions and debates and presentations and role plays. However, we still have a lot of communication classes to improve their skills, and researchers find out that student communication skills are always one of the problem areas when they study. So students often do not achieve the skills necessary, and they also do not have skills to especially express their expressions in classroom. So researchers point out that no matter how good teaching skills and method the teacher has, it is practically difficult to guide the student with various characteristics and individuality. So the communication area is one of the problem area in the classroom. That's what I want to focus. Second, research purposes. The purposes of this research were to find out whether the students are willing to communicate with each other, and whether the students are prepared to communicate with each other, and whether there are relationships between the willingness of communication and the communication skills. So before we look at the communication skills only, I try to measure their willingness to communication, because sometimes teacher asked or their peers try to communicate with each other. There are some students who do not want to react to others' questions. So I want to see the willingness of communication first. So there are three research questions to find the purposes of the research. The first, what are the levels of the willingness to communicate? Are the levels differ by gender or academic areas? And what are the student levels of communication skills? Are the levels differ by gender or academic areas? Is willingness to communicate and communication skills relate to each other? These are the three research questions. So focusing on the willingness of communication and the communication skills, I try to look at their levels and if there are any differences by gender or academic areas, and are there any relationships between their levels and their skills. So there are a lot of previous researches regarding the communication, especially willingness to communicate. Is studied from unwillingness to communicate, the research from the unwillingness to communicate. The concept of willingness to communicate originally originated in research to determine the phenomenon of lack of communication. So as today, maybe previously, there are problems with the communication skills in student in the classroom. That's why they started with the communication unwillingness to communicate research. And it is the most basic orientation toward communication. So almost anyone is likely to respond to direct question, but many will not continue or initiate the interaction. So they can answer very shortly yes or no, but many people do not want to continue their conversation. So personal variables such as alienation or anomie or introversion and self-esteem are directly related to the lack of communication. So researchers see the lack of communication or the phenomenon of communication are related to the personal characteristics or individuality. So if they find the personal characteristics, they can make the programs to improve their communication skills, focusing on the individuality. The concept of unwillingness to communicate, which is disapproving communication from a negative perspective, is first introduced. As I said, willingness of communication is built based on the people's own characteristics and previous experience by responses of the communicators. The schools have attempted to promote student motives and emotional feelings to communicate in classrooms. However, no matter how good teaching skills and methods are there, it is practically difficult to guide a student with various individuality, as I said before. And if you look at the communication skills competencies refer to the ability to actually communicate and receive the meaning of each other when they talking or exchanging opinions through documents. And these skills are very important for people to maintain smooth relationships and improve their social function and work performance. So at school, their communication skills should be taught. Since relationship building is most important function of communication, success of communication is an important issue for Koreans who value affection, especially improving communication quality to maintain and improve relationships with close people. So the reason why communication skill is important in Asian society is communicating with each other or with close people are very important, and it's a kind of manner in the nature in culture. So communication skills and willingness to communicate are the two main factors affecting on student communication skills in classroom. So the research focuses are on these two factors. And people tend to stick to their own ways of communication based on their experience. The educational program could help people develop a way of communication and choose consistent responses, so they should be self-aware of themselves and others and situations. So the focus of this research is we find out the levels of communication and levels of willingness of communication. We can make educational programs to improve or encourage their communication skills in classrooms. Number 4, research design. So research, if you look at the research method, this research used a survey method. There are two survey instruments were used in this research. The first one is WTC. WTC is the willingness to communication instrument developed by McCrory and Richmond, and the second one was communication skills survey that was developed by the researcher, and it has 24 questions. So I use these two research instruments as for a survey and collect the data. The total participant for this research was 121 students who enrolled in the critical thinking and communication classes this semester, actually last semester. So there are a lot of universities which has critical thinking and communication skills classes as a requirement. So the students can develop their communications in these classes. However, in these circumstances, there are a lot of online classes for communication. So I try to measure the communication skills and their willingness to communicate in this class and see how their levels are. So when we look at the participant again, it was 121, and there are 60 female student and 61 male student, and there are 4 different classes. So 38, well, class A consists of 38, class B consists of 30, and class C consists of 29, and class D consists of 24. And data collection was done by online. So there are those 2 survey instruments were uploaded online, and it was explained to the students about the research purposes and how they participate and how they answer to the questionnaire. And if they are willing to participate in this research, they could do that. However, they didn't want to, then they have a choice not to do it. So the research purposes are fully explained to the student, and their willingness is voluntary. So research data was collected through online, and for the analysis, SPSS 27 was used. And collected data was analyzed by means and standard deviations, or t-test, and relationships, Pearson's relationships test. So to see the tendencies or levels of communication skills and willingness communication skills, the means were used, the mean score was used, and if there are any relationships by gender or academic areas, t-test and ANOVA test was used, and to see if there are relationships between communication skills and willingness to communicate, the Pearson's correlationship test was used. So it was explained the methodology, how the data was interpreted. So findings. So first, when you look at the levels of communication skills, the levels were pretty low, like a mean score is 3.48. The communication skill surveys were categorized 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas, like information processing and self-concept, and verbal and non-verbal communication, and conversational and technical motives, and interpersonal relationships, and communication between men and women and families, and communication between street management and persuasion. And their levels were like 3, mean score by 3, around 3, and there is no specifically high score or low score. It was like 3.47, from 3.47 to 3.06. So the mean score is 3.8, which is very low. So the research shows that their communication skills are very low. And when we take the ANOVA test to see if there are any differences in by gender or academic areas, there are differences shown by gender. So men and women, the female student and male student, show the differences in their communication skills. And when the levels of willingness to communication survey instruments were analyzed, I can say some areas are high and some areas are low. The interpretation of this survey is like there are high score and there are low score. So like willingness to group discussion, the high score is 89. If the score is above 89, it can be high, and if it's below 57, we can say it's low. And the mean score is 73.68, which is in between, so it's a kind of middle. And willingness to have meetings, it was 67. If it's low, then it's lower than 39, but it's not high, but it's not that low, so we can say it's a middle. And willingness to have interpersonal conversations, and 67, and the lowest score is 64, so we can say willingness to have interpersonal conversation can be low, so it's close to lowest score. And willingness to public speaking, and it was between 78 and 33, and the score was 69, which is close to high score. So we can say willingness to public speaking can be high. And willingness to communicate with strangers, it was 50, and it was also close to high score, which is 63. It's not that high, but it's not that low. And willingness to communicate with acquaintance, and 92, between 92 and 57, it's 76, so it can be a middle as well. And willingness to communicate with friends, 81, which is close to high score, 99. It's not that high. Actually, lowest score is 71, so we can say it's kind of middle. So most scores for the willingness to communicate is in the middle, except for the one willingness to public speaking, which is close to the high score, and willingness to have interpersonal conversation, which is close to 64. So interpersonal conversations, students do not want, and public speaking, since they are trained to do the presentation in classroom, I think it can be high. And when you look at the relationships between communication skills and willingness to communicate, it's all related. Group discussion and interpersonal and self-concepts is related with each other with p-value 0.0. And the meetings and all these, the factors from the communication skills and willingness to communicate, they are all related with each other. But some factors are not related. Just one, communication skills between men and women and families, and the one verbal and non-verbal communication. Those parts are not related. So we can say mostly communication skills and willingness to communicate are related to each other. So as a conclusion, this study shows that student levels of communication skills and willingness to communicate, which we can say communication skills are kind of low and willingness to communicate are in the middle. And it also shows that willingness to communicate and communication skills are related to each other. So the study suggests that since these two factors are related to each other, if we want to improve student communication skills, we can focus on their willingness to communicate. At first, we have to find out what kind of personal factors are related to willingness to communicate, and then we can focus on those factors to make the educational program to improve the communication skills. So not just making a whole program to communicate with each other, we have to look at the personal factors and personal characteristics that can influence on their communications. So this study revealed that when people have a willingness to communicate, their communication skills can be improved. So as I said before, educational programs should focus on the student emotional or mental or personal factors of willingness to communicate, to have a communication to improve their communication skills. Thanks for your attention for my research. Thank you.